In 1953, the greatest biological discovery of the century was announced. Scientists had finally uncovered the structure of DNA, the code of life. Two names became famous around the world. Textbooks celebrated them, history remembered them, but behind the discovery was another scientist, one whose work provided the critical evidence. Without her data, the discovery might have taken years longer. Her name was Rosalind Franklin. Yet when the world celebrated the breakthrough, most people never heard her name. And her story reveals an uncomfortable truth about success. Hard work does not guarantee recognition. Sometimes, perception decides who gets remembered. In the early 1950s, scientists were racing to solve one of the greatest mysteries in biology. What does DNA actually look like? Everyone knew DNA carried genetic information, but nobody knew its structure. In laboratories across the world, researchers were competing to solve the puzzle. But inside a quiet lab at King's College, London, one scientist was getting closer than anyone else. She wasn't chasing fame. She wasn't giving interviews. She was simply doing careful, precise work. The kind of work that rarely attracts attention. London, early 1950s. Inside a laboratory at King's College, Rosalind Franklin studied DNA using a technique called X-ray crystallography. This method involved firing X-rays through DNA fibers and capturing the diffraction pattern. Each pattern contained clues about the molecule's shape. It was slow work, painfully precise. Franklin spent months refining her experiments, adjusting humidity, preparing DNA samples, taking images again and again. Most experiments failed, but eventually one photograph appeared on the film, a perfectly symmetrical X-shaped pattern. It became known as Photo 51. That image revealed something extraordinary. DNA was not random, it had a helical structure. Meanwhile, at the University of Cambridge, two scientists were also trying to solve the DNA puzzle, James Watson and Francis Crick. They weren't experimentalists like Franklin. They were theorists, model builders. When Watson saw Franklin's Photo 51, the structure suddenly made sense. Within weeks, Watson and Crick built the famous double helix model of DNA. In 1953, the discovery was published. The scientific world celebrated. Nearly a decade later, the breakthrough was honored with the 1962 Nobel Prize. The prize went to Watson, Crick, and Maurice Wilkins. But one name was missing. Rosalind Franklin had died in 1958 at the age of 37. And in the public story of DNA's discovery, her role faded into the background. That moment reveals something important about how recognition actually works. Most people grow up believing a simple idea. If you work hard enough, the world will eventually notice. But reality is more complicated. Recognition follows psychological patterns, not just effort. The story of Rosalind Franklin reveals three uncomfortable truths. First, effort is invisible. People cannot see the months of failed experiments, the late nights, the quiet persistence. They only see the final announcement. Second, narratives simplify complex events. The discovery of DNA involved many researchers, but history prefers simple stories. Two heroes, one breakthrough. Simple narratives are easier to remember, so the public story compressed a complex scientific race into a few famous names. Third, positioning matters. Franklin was focused on collecting precise data. Watson and Crick were focused on building a bold theory. The theory captured the spotlight. The data remained in the background. In many fields, business, science, careers, this pattern repeats. The person doing the most careful work is not always the one remembered, because recognition is shaped by visibility, storytelling, and timing, not effort alone. The story of Rosalind Franklin reveals four hidden rules of recognition. First, effort is invisible. Most hard work happens privately. People rarely see the preparation behind success. They only see the outcome. Second, narratives create heroes. History compresses complex achievements into simple stories. Often a few visible figures become the symbols of much larger efforts. Third, positioning shapes credit. Those who present ideas publicly often receive more recognition than those who quietly produce data. Visibility amplifies contribution. Fourth, timing shapes legacy. Franklin died 4 years before the Nobel Prize. Recognition sometimes depends on circumstances beyond effort or talent. Identity shift. Most people approach success like this. They work harder. They assume effort will eventually speak for itself. But strategic thinkers understand something different. Effort matters, but visibility multiplies effort. Average performers hope their work will be noticed. Strategic performers learn to communicate their value, not through arrogance, but through clarity. Because in the real world, perception often decides whose work gets remembered. History remembers a few names, but behind every discovery, every innovation, every breakthrough, there are quiet minds doing careful work. The world often celebrates the visible, but progress is built by many people whose names rarely appear in headlines. And sometimes the greatest contributions come from those who never sought the spotlight. Like Rosalind Franklin, a scientist whose work helped reveal the code of life, even if history took time to recognize it. If this story changed the way you think about success, subscribe to MindLiftSuccessAcademy, because success isn't random. It follows psychological rules most people never notice. And comment clarity if you believe effort alone isn't enough.